It's been 1 year since the All-In Brawl occurred, which included CM Punk and Jack Perry exchanging thoughts, words, and fists, ultimately leading up to the firing of Punk, who at the time was one of, if not the biggest stars in the company. In this video, I'll be summarizing the events that led up to the Brawl at All-In, the significance it had for AEW at the time, and how it has shaped both the WWE and AEW 1 year later. On August 20th, 2021, the wrestling world stood still, if for only a moment, when static crashed the arena and the speakers blasted out that familiar guitar riff from Living Colour's Cult of Personality. CM Punk was back in a wrestling promotion, and though it wasn't the WWE at this time, it was still something special and a sight that was sorely missed by most hardcore fans. Punk's return was held in Chicago, and it wiped away a 7-year absence from the sport. He looked incredible walking out, the Chicago crowd was going absolutely nuts, and you could feel the elation through your television screen, but most importantly, you could see the relief and joy in CM Punk's face. He was home. Wrestling had CM Punk back. Now released from the shackles of Vince McMahon's WWE, a bridge so burnt it was deemed impossible to rebuild ever again, CM Punk had returned to wrestling and not sports entertainment. It wasn't unheard of that a former talent from WWE transitioned to an AEW main event talent, but in CM Punk's case, it was different. Even at 42, he had plenty of years of wrestling left in him, and he was back inside his squared circle after 7 years. 7 years of fans chanting his name despite his absence. 7 years of one of the best WWE champions in the modern era just suddenly gone from the wrestling world. This was not only a net positive for AEW as a company, but for wrestling fans as a whole. Surely the outcome would prove to be fruitful for AEW and for Punk, right? Nearly 1 year later to the day, CM Punk defeated Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship, marking the second title win since joining the company. Like the first reign, however, CM Punk faced an injury that put a giant wedge between competition and recovery, and Punk was forced to vacate the title in order to undergo surgery on his left tricep. During the post-match scrum, Punk showcased a visible sign of disappointment, which fueled his angered rants about Colt Cabana, Hangman Adam Page, and others within the company, stating, quote, "I'm hurt and I'm old and I'm fucking tired and I work with fucking children," end quote. It was at this time that an altercation broke out behind closed doors between CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and a member of AEW Legal. The physical altercation led to the suspension of all involved parties, which led into Punk's vacating of the title and time off to recover from tricep surgery. After 9 months off, Punk returned to in-ring action and would bring back the AEW World Championship that he declared had never lost, and therefore was still its rightful owner. With a newly sprayed X over the plate of the title, Punk successfully defended the AEW World Championship against Samoa Joe at the 2023 All-In pay-per-view, which also marked the very last appearance of Punk in AEW. He and Joe put on an absolute banger of a match filled with emotion, blood, and plenty of action, but 6 days later, it was announced that Punk's contract with AEW had been terminated with just cause. Just like that, CM Punk was gone from the wrestling world again. In order to get to the Brawl at All-In, one must rewind just a bit to get to the full picture. Luckily enough for us, Punk has told the story of how things transpired and soured over the months leading up to the altercation. From Tony Khan premiering a brand new televised show in order to break up the roster and separate the two sides from further problems, to the canon event of Punk telling Jack Perry not to use real glass, there was so much that happened in such a short amount of time, it was no wonder that things led up to a volcanic eruption between the two grown men with egos as big as their mouths. It was one sentence that really blew things apart and kicked the door wide open to one of the biggest blow-ups in AEW history. During Jack Perry's match at All-In, Perry tapped the glass of a car window, turned to the camera, and said, quote, "Real glass, cry me a river." Those 6 words were all that it took for things to go from problematic to destructive. Backstage, Punk confronted Perry about why he insisted on doing this dumb internet shit, and when Perry said to do something about it if he had a problem, that's where things got chaotic. Footage showing Punk shoving Perry before placing him in a chokehold was released, and we can see Samoa Joe intervene and tell Punk to stop. Afterward, Punk can be seen shouting to someone off camera, which Punk himself revealed to be Tony Khan. Punk said this place was a joke and that he quits, before walking out to do his match. Mind you, this is right before walking out to face Samoa Joe at All-In, so the shit-eating grin on his face as he comes out to his entrance has a whole new meaning in retrospect. We'll get into the leaked footage in a little bit, but before we do, we have to talk about one of the biggest returns in professional wrestling history. You remember how I opened up this video with Punk's return to wrestling and how the wrestling world stood still? Well, in November 2023, the world came to a full stop as CM Punk made his return to wrestling for a second time, this time with the WWE. Punk's static sound and cult of personality played for the first time on WWE programming in almost 10 years, bringing out one of the most controversial figures in its history. If I told you that the arena was deafening, it wouldn't give it justice. The fact that the music was drowned out by cheers is a clear sign that you did something right. The moment of Punk walking out in a white shirt and a smile on his face felt like the wrestling world was complete once again. It's hard to put into words how crazy the last 3 years were as a major CM Punk fan, from seeing him return to a wrestling ring in 2021, when the thought of being there was thought to never happen again, to hearing of his dismissal from the company and then the bigger and louder return in WWE. The whirlwind of emotions could be felt through the television, and it forever changed the landscape of not one, but two companies, for better or for worse. During an interview with Ariel Helwani, CM Punk sat down for nearly 2 hours to chat about a multitude of things, but most importantly, what led to his dismissal from AEW. Mind you, this interview took place after he returned to the WWE, which felt surreal to see him talking about what got him fired from a competitive company in the detail that he did. After the interview, AEW began circulating the promise that they would reveal the all-in footage between CM Punk and Jack Perry and explain what went down. Now, spoiler alert for those who have been living under a rock or stay away from social media. The footage was indeed aired on AEW television and was narrated by none other than Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks. This was their attempt to not only get the footage out into the world, but to also use it for storyline purposes, showing that such an event led to their distraction and subsequent loss to FTR. Ironically enough, the release of the footage perfectly matched the description of the event told by CM Punk during his interview, so much so that a picture-by-picture was created to show just how accurate it was. We're talking Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz type stuff.
I thought I was doing a responsible thing, you know? I didn't punch anybody. I just choked somebody a little bit.
The leaking of the footage not only confirmed Punk's story, further damaged the reputation of AEW, a company that was still invested in an altercation that took place 7 months prior. Sure, you can cite their coverage of the footage as a direct answer to Punk's interview with Ariel, but at the same time, they knew exactly what was in the footage and decided to roll it out to the public anyway. The aftermath was only negative, as fans in the arena began booing the video and chanting CM Punk, and while the spike in viewership was gained through this event, it didn't do much to help the following week and the weeks following after that. Wrestling fans on social media had a good laugh at the expense of AEW, who remained in the idea that they were on the right side of history, with both the firing of CM Punk and the airing of the backstage footage. We also had the Young Bucks parading in the ring at the conclusion of a televised event, celebrating Punk's dismissal of the company as if they had lost nothing and had everything they gained from the move. In their minds, they had eliminated a cancer from the locker room, and could now proceed to improve their product and rise from the controversy. So, how did it turn out for them in the end? One of the best ways to gauge public interest is to look into the stats of televised shows and check the viewership of each brand. Using WrestleNomics data, which I can't state enough how useful of a resource it is, and if you haven't heard of them yet, now's your chance to check them out and show them some love. We can see the downward trajectory of a show like AEW Dynamite from the moment CM Punk was a member of the active roster to his dismissal from the company. In Q3 of 2021, which correlates with Punk's debut, total viewership spiked from Q2's 954,000 total to 1,104,000. Its first 1 million viewership rating in company history. It's fair to note that Q2's viewership was on the rise from Q1 by 179,000 people, but Punk's presence certainly added value to the product and aided with the extra rise to its 1 million viewership total. If you look into the last Dynamite show before the roster split and introduction to Collision, AEW numbers dipped no lower than 907,000, which is higher than any other weekly viewership total that predates Punk's arrival, save for the very quarter before his debut. We can also take into account that by the end of the third quarter of 2023, Punk was no longer a part of the roster, and as a result, Collision ratings went from a solid debut of 706,000 people, which is phenomenal for the brand's B show, to an abysmal 442,000 without Punk. Today, Collision is struggling to break even the 400,000 mark, while Dynamite has yet to see another 1 million total since Punk's departure, and has only seen their viewership drop with each quarter that passes them by. And AEW Rampage? You can forget about it, as they haven't touched 400,000 viewers since Punk's dismissal, and the show has plummeted to below 300,000 viewers in the last 2 quarters of 2024. You can't blame Punk for everything wrong with AEW, and there are plenty of things to bring up, but the fact is that releasing one of your top stars that helped build 2 quarters of over 1 million viewers is, as they say, not what's best for business. On the opposite side of the pond, the WWE hasn't yet reached its 2020 quarter one form when they averaged over 2.2 million viewers for Monday Night Raw, but the decline seems to have reached its conclusion in quarter four of 2023. Keep in mind, average viewership for Monday Night Raw was dropping in increments each quarter starting in 2023, from a 1,834,000 average viewership in quarter one of 2023 to 1,462,000 by the end of the year. When you're still averaging 1 million viewers each quarter, it may appear fine on the surface, but the numbers dropping steadily should be a cause for concern. After Punk's arrival back in WWE, the decline stopped. The first quarter of 2024, which featured a one-arm CM Punk feuding with the likes of Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins, averaged 1,750,000 viewers, their best quarter in nearly a year, and the numbers continue to rise. 1,747,000 in quarter two, and currently at 1,774,000 and rising in quarter three. Again, I don't think you can give all the credit in the world to CM Punk reviving the WWE. A lot of that can go towards the refreshing booking style of Triple H, but having Punk back on Monday Night Raw is a great way to give wrestling fans extra incentive to tune in, especially with the nature they've done it with, by having him feud with McIntyre for several months. In terms of year-over-year comparisons, WWE's quarter four performance for Monday Night Raw is the only one in the green at the moment, up by 6%, while SmackDown is down by 4% and NXT is down by 12%, its first down quarter in over a year. On the AEW side, Collision is down by 23%, which shouldn't surprise anyone with the numbers given earlier, while Dynamite is down by 21% and Rampage is down by 24%. Again, all numbers can't all be directly tied to just one man. There are tons of other issues with both companies that could drop average viewership at any point. Stale product, bad booking, injuries taking out top stars, you name it. But I do think it's peculiar to see the shift in viewership begin to take place at the very moment Punk moved over from one company to the other. Look, at the end of the day, I'm a wrestling fan and I want to see both companies succeed. Yes, I was raised on WWE programming, and by all accounts, I still consider myself a WWE regular 3.5 decades later. But that doesn't mean I don't want AEW to succeed. A second major company is another opportunity for those who couldn't quite make it to the WWE or just didn't see their work schedule as interesting enough, another chance. AEW is a place others can go and make their money, perform in front of larger audience compared to the independent circuit, and be viewed on television every week. It's assets like these that can't be denied, which is why I don't want to see AEW fizzle out. Granted, Tony Khan and his family have deep pockets, so that danger may not even be a thought in their mind. But declining viewership each quarter spells disaster for future TV deals and exposure, which is ultimately a net negative for everyone involved. I'm glad we got CM Punk back in a wrestling ring in 2021, and we have Tony Khan to thank for that. We also have him to thank for CM Punk returning to the WWE. What happens 2 years after the altercation between Punk and Jack Perry, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe Punk and Perry are world champions of their respective companies by then. How do you feel about this event 1 year later and how both companies were forever changed by it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm curious to hear from both WWE fans and AEW fans alike. Just remember to keep it civil down there while you do so. Alright, that's it for this one. I had a blast writing out the script and preparing the video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you stuck around until the very end, be sure to hit that like button on this video, and hit the subscribe button as well. That bell notification will help alert you of any new uploads, and I'd love to see you back for my next one. With that said, please remember to be kind to one another, and stay safe.